This is a See It Played video for Les Marshals or the Marshals, Junot and Soult in Portugal. This is the first volume in this series. This was published in a Vivictus magazine. I'm still trying to figure this system out. Still trying to figure out what I really think of its modeling of Napoleonic campaigns and operations. The Marshals is a generic game series now, simulating the campaigns led by the French generals and marshals under the consulate in the First Empire, away from their brilliant commander Bonaparte. Going to be looking at the first game, or yeah, they're not really scenarios, they're really mini games. So this volume 1 comes with Junot 1808 campaign and Soult, a campaign by Soult in 1809. 1809. So again, a See It Played video. So we'll get started. Here's my complete play area, or most of my play area here. English translation of the rules. I've got on this side, I've got a 8.5 by 11 printout of the detailed game sequence, player aid with the different modifiers, and the amplitude of combat or intensity of combat table. The map is just the European or metric version of 8.5 by 11. Very small play area, as you can see, point to point. As you can see, Lisbon in the south up to Óbidos in the north. Basically, we have clear areas, clear points. We have town points, and we have difficult or defensive points. Yellow triangles there. This is our play area. Got our turn track here, begins on 16th. Of August, 16th of August, goes to the 23rd, if there's not an early end. Per events, we have a number of PM used movement points. So you have a little movement point track. We've got our forces now. Well, I guess they are starting forces. So they're turned down. This is how it would be played in two-player, face-to-face. Just have the side flags indicated up. Have the British fleet up here in Peniche port. Over on the left, we these are the two event marker pools. 9 for the Allies, the Anglo Allies. 9 for the French. And then these are the force displays or orders of battle. Red obviously for Anglo Allies, blue for French. Ones on the top are top Allied, Anglo Allies, top French for Junot 1808. The bottom ones, this is for Soult 1809. So we're playing with the top ones. We have, these are leader boxes, I guess. Wellesley and units and units under him currently under him. That's Wellesley and this is all Wellesley, just in 2 stacks. Okay. Over here on the French side, we have 2 leaders, named leaders, Junot and his force, and Le Loison and his force. So these are very simple, but they're both a strength track and a morale track for each unit. So here we have the units named on the sides. This is 1st and 2nd Brigades as a unit, 3rd and 4th, 5th and 6th, etc. So for this scenario, we have 5 units that are tracked this way. Cavalry and artillery, for example, aren't tracked this way because they are basically considered one-step units. So as these units lose strength points, I'm going to mark them off from right to left. So they're going to mark down the track, and then the number inside the circle for each step level is its morale. So units will lose strength and drop in morale at different rates. That's basically how that's done. Off to the side, I've got my fatigue markers. I think there are a dozen fatigue markers marked 0, 1, 2, and 3. So that's a pool of fatigue markers. Actually, those can be turned over. They are drawn randomly as a force moves. So that is a common pool of fatigue chits like that. Dice, 6-sided dice, and general markers for destroyed bridge, destroyed bridges, demoralized, retreat, axis of retreat, combated, etc. So other informational markers there. Okay, so the game does call them scenarios, so I'll call them scenarios. So the Junot Portugal 1808 scenario, this is the information you get, the length, number of turns. Again, it will go to August 23rd unless the Berard event has been drawn. Setup by area. Nothing really unusual there except that 2 of the French areas are labeled A and B on the map, corresponding to entries in the setup there, Zone A, Zone B. Line of communication for the Anglo-Allies, their line of communication goes back to the port where the British fleet is. So the British fleet can move from Peniche here down to Vimero, down to this unnamed port, down to this unnamed port, and I guess that's it. So you can move between 4 ports. Okay, that's where the British line of communication is traced back to, and the French back to Lisbon, south of the map there. Okay, a number of available decoys. The Anglo-Allies have 3. Oh, I want to be looking at the right force. There it is. All right, this is a colorful looking decoy, Anglo-Allied decoy marker. Okay, so those can be used on the map for some fog of war. Your victory conditions, which I guess I'll go over in more detail later. I just want to get started. Details your event chits, again 9 and 9, they're already laid out there in the 2 piles. Special rules. The British fleet counter represents the Anglo-Allied line of communication. It has no influence on movement or combat and cannot be eliminated. During the first operation of each turn, the Anglo-Allied player decides if he wants to leave the fleet in this port, in its current port, or for free move it to another port. The only special rule for this scenario. So there we go. So wanting to assist their Portuguese allies after the invasion of their territory by a French contingent on the orders of Junot, the British deploy 14,000 men to Figueras, Associated with the beginnings of the new Portuguese army, they head directly for Lisbon. Their commander-in-chief, Wellesley, oversees a precarious interim while waiting for his superiors. If he wants to shine, he must have a quick victory. On the other side, General Junot is also in a rush to break from the English, claim victory, and obtain his field marshal's baton. Delaborde sends a first force, an advance force, to slow down the enemy's advance and create a concentration of French troops at Torres Vedras. More methodical in keeping his army within reach, Wellesley pushes Delaborde back despite strong resistance at Rolitza. He continues toward the south following the coast and receives 4,500 additional soldiers who land near Vimero. Carefree and not realizing he is now outnumbered, Junot attacks Wellesley at Vimero and is hugely defeated. Even though he must yield command with the arrival of his superior Berard, Wellesley has won the respect of the army. Meanwhile, Junot will sign a convention in favor of Sintra, allowing him to return to France without sacrificing the trust of the emperor. Turn starts with the initiative phase. Each side rolls 6-sided die and adds the commander-in-chief's initiative value. So Junot adds a strategic value, strategic value. Junot has 0, so Junot rolls a 2, adds 0 for 2. Wellesley rolls a 6 and has a strategic value of 2, so easily wins the initiative with 8. Next we'll do the events phase. Again, each player or side has their own pool of event markers. Each side will draw one randomly. Okay. The French drew Kellerman. Okay, which is not. It is an event marker, but it does not have a star on it. Yeah, well, the star must be played immediately. The others can be held on to. So, French player will look at Kellerman, and the British Wellesley draws initiative. So, since Wellesley will be going first, might as well look at that event marker. Okay, just of note, I'll probably just keep mentioning instances. None of the translation is horrible or a showstopper. None of it is. It's just awkward English translation. So that one was definitely awkward English translation. But what it means is after the initiative is determined, the side that didn't get the initiative may play an initiative chit to seize the initiative. And if the other, so I guess there's a French initiative event chit as well, which yeah, there is. Okay, so the French or the other side could play their chit to get the initiative back. So that's the initiative chit used for seizing the initiative. All right. Okay, this is the start of the operations phase C of the turn sequence. Since Wellesley is going first, this is Wellesley, by the way. He starts in the city of Óbidos here. We know that. We just start with one concentrated Anglo-Allied ground force there. Since it's the start of the operations phase, we might as well talk about the fleet first, because this is the start of the operations phase now, Anglo-Allied player would decide whether to move the fleet to another port. So does the fleet go ahead, basically, to Vimeiro now, or wait in Peniche? I don't really know in game terms, but it would seem that moving the fleet forward to Vimeiro would make it easier for the French to cut the lines of communication. Because, well, see, this is why we might as well do a quick. All right, if the fleet were there, there's this gap here. So basically, and the gap corresponds to this mountain range here. Serra de Monte Junto. Okay, so basically moving north and south of this line, we call it the Vimeiro line, or Torres Vedras line. You have this one, this one, this one, and, well, basically you have to go through this area, or you have to go through these. So really there are three areas to get through this line. So to cut, so if the fleet were there, I imagine the French could simply occupy 1, 2, 3 that they're already at and block all lines of communication from Vimeiro north. So, doesn't seem to be a good idea. We'll leave the fleet there. Otherwise, looking at land routes here, does Wellesley basically, well, first of all, does Wellesley simply go against the first French force right away? Rolitsa here is a crossroads location there. It is a crossroads. Does he go inland? Of course, there's a French force waiting for him there. Or does he go towards the coastal side? And of course, how does he split up? And in considering splitting up, should probably consider, let's take a look at his entire force. So we had talked about the only value on the leader counter here is the 2 in the lower right, his strategic value. Now let's look at his force. In a face-to-face game, two-player face-to-face game with Fog of War, the Anglo-Allied player would be looking at 2 3-unit stacks, and not including looking at and analyzing the scenario setup. It would be just 3 generic counters on the other side that the Anglo-Allied player is looking at. Okay, so this is all that Wellesley is working with at the start here. He's got 3 of his main infantry units, 1st and 2nd Brigades, 3rd and 4th Brigades, 5th and 6th Brigades. He's got his Portuguese Allied infantry and his Portuguese Allied mounted unit. He's got his British Dragoons. So altogether he has 2 mounted units. He's got 3 artillery units. He's got his baggage trains. And he's got 3 decoys. So again, he could probably, well, I mean, he could split this up into 3 or 4 units for forces, but certainly he could consider 2. And then the question is, where does he try to? Where does he actually concentrate? Where does he try to deceive the French side with the decoys? All different considerations. Do the baggage trains could stay in Obidos, but to be most useful, probably should take them with him. And how does he split up the artillery? All different considerations. I think in general, he's going to try to maneuver this French force out of this position. Maneuver out meaning, so from this position, the French have 3 axes of retreat, right? Back here, here, and here. Certainly getting to, well, we have to figure out in game terms what a long march is versus a regular march. But in general, Wellesley's going to try to maneuver this force out here, out of this position, by dividing up into 2 forces. Yeah, 2 forces. He could do 3, but I'll experiment with dividing into 2 forces and try to maneuver this force out of this position. See, unfortunately, you can't go from Obidos to the inland flank without going through the defensive position in that French force there. So to maneuver this force out of here, you pretty much have to go the seaward side. Okay, not very creative and not very daring or whatever. I actually went with a very strong force and a significantly weaker force. So 2 of the regular infantry units with the British Dragoons, Portuguese Allied infantry, 2 artillery, baggage trains, 2 decoys will stay with Wellesley. The weaker force, 1 British infantry, Portuguese cavalry, 1 artillery, one decoy. And the weaker force is going to go around, and the main force is going to, again, I'm going to play it very safe and try to, as a matter of fact, maybe I will try to maneuver completely around and get between this French force and Vimero and try this first turn, basically try all maneuver, and let's see what the toll is on the forces for this marching. So I have my heavy stack and my light stack. In game terms, I am going to activate the heavy stack through movement, and then I need to verify command, although I'm sure command is fine on the first turn, but in game terms you would do that. So this is Wellesley's stack that I'm activating, the heavy stack. So Commander-in-Chief associated with the stack enables the stack to be activated without a command test. So there's no command test for this stack because the Commander-in-Chief is with it. So we are moving. During a move, a stack must follow a succession of zones linked by connections. So this is Wellesley here. Route or path, the cost. Okay, so to move the first connection across the bridge from Obidos to the area there. It is a clear area. It's a green circle, Green circle's clear. Offensive value is 0. The route, this is a trail. The brown connector right there is a trail, so it costs 2 movement points. So Wellesley's force is moving as slow as his slowest units, and he has the baggage trains and artillery with him that have movement values, movement allowances of 4. So they've used 2 to move along the trail to the clear area there. This is where I used the movement point track. I've spent 2 for this this force already. I imagine you use the track because you can have, in an operation, you can have movement and combat intermingled, I'm assuming. So I guess that's the significance of that track. But we've used 2. Now let's figure out what happens. What happens having completed that first march to the first new zone. Okay, so that zone was not enemy occupied, so we can move right on to fatigue. And this is so far in this entire game, which is not very complex, this is the one area where I still slow down and take this in detail step by step. So after crossing a connection, which is what we've done, the player must draw at random. So I'm drawing at random right now a fatigue marker. I just drew a fatigue 2, and that's really not good. So I randomly drew a fatigue 2 marker. Regardless of the connection crossed. Again, we crossed a trail connection. That's not relevant. The rules are saying you draw that fatigue marker randomly from the pool. Different modifiers can apply for the draw. I had completely forgotten about this actually. So on the player aid card, so here on our player aid card, we've got our fatigue modifiers. +1 marker for each connection for a stack of more than 10 strength steps. The first question is, how many strength steps do we have? This is our heavy force. This doesn't sound good, but let's figure out the strength. All right, the 3rd and 4th brigades there. Looking at that order of battle display I mentioned before. Okay, figure out this, how many steps this entire force has. So we got the 3rd and 4th brigades, and I think that 8 is his movement allowance, but I think that 3rd and 4th brigade, I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4. 4 steps. 1st and 2nd brigades have 6 steps. Ooh, so right there we have 10. Dragoons, 1 step. Trent has 2 steps. So we're already up to 13, 14, 15. All right, we'll say 15 plus baggage trains. I'm not sure if baggage trains count as a step or not. Okay, the rules seem to imply that the baggage trains are not a step, but cavalry and artillery are each 1 step, so we are at 15. So we draw another fatigue marker at random for that case. So I drew another fatigue marker at random, a fatigue 1 marker, and that was for having more than 10 strength steps. There are some important details in here, so I'm going to continue. It's +2 for more than 20 strength points, etc. So +3 for 30 strength points or more, etc. +1 marker for each I'll combat to or has combated marker on the stack at the beginning of its movement. So that's those markers. +1 marker for the stack enters a zone occupied by an enemy stack. That's not us right now. +1 marker for each connection if the stack does not have a clear route from the connection where it is located to one of its lines of communication. So basically, when you cut the opponent's line of communication, the stack will take more fatigue, and the more fatigue a stack takes or force takes, the more attritional losses it will take. Attritional losses, the more losses it will take. Now, this is important. Put back one marker if the baggage or a commander accompanies the stack, and this is cumulative. This is important. Wellesley and the baggage trains are with this force. This is very interesting. We have the decision to put back one or even both of these fatigue markers. So I'll pick up with the fatigue rules again. This, and I'm going to get to why this is pretty devastating and why we have to clear some of that out. So all the different modifiers, so all the modifiers are cumulative. By the way, it specifies baggage is not counted in the total when figuring out if you have a fatigue marker draw required for the size of the force. If it is not possible to go from the connection with a stack is to one of its, so that's the line of communication modifier. If the stack has received one or more, okay, that's the has combated markers modifier. Entering an enemy occupied zone. Okay, here we go. Drawn markers can be ignored in the following cases. If the stack is accompanied by baggage, the player can once and only once return a fatigue marker, okay, to the pool, and same with the commander. Presence of several commanders in the stack doesn't. Okay, the presence of several commanders in the stack does not allow numerous fatigue markers to be returned. Tally the fatigue points accumulated by using the values noted on the counters. The drawn markers are not returned to the container after each drawing, but only when the player decides to interrupt his movement. Then all of the markers are returned to the container. If the accumulated fatigue exceeds the morale of one or more units of the stack, those units must stop their movement, and the infantry units must also lose one strength step. Other units in the stack may continue. So, exceeds the morale. Exceeds the morale. So what is the lowest morale? Trent has a current morale of 3. Actually, we need to look closer at this. We need to figure out, we have 3 fatigue points right now, not counting putting one or both back because of the commander, Wellesley, and the baggage trains. But we need to figure out what the strength losses are here. Okay, let's look at the morale condition of the entire force going right down the line. So 1st and 2nd brigades here has a current morale of 4. 3rd and 4th brigades have a current morale of 4. The dragoons have a red 5 on the top right part of the counter. That's their morale. So it's always 5 for, well, they're only 1-step units anyways. But anyways, so the dragoons are at 5. Trent, or Trant, spelled both ways, but their current morale is 3. So the lowest we have is 3 so far. I don't know if baggage trains have a morale. I'll just assume they don't. And I don't know what the morale is for artillery units, but I'm just going to ignore that for now. So the lowest of our force is the Portuguese infantry at 3. And so we've taken 3 fatigue points. We have not exceeded his morale. So I think, yeah, so, well, no, actually there are fatigue 0 markers. So the idea is, I see something. Okay, so accumulated fatigue doesn't really mean anything until you've exceeded the morale of units. We're at 3, which equals the Portuguese infantry morale. So, I see. Okay, so Wellesley marches on one more area. This again is another trail, costing 2 movement points. So we've spent, actually I'll adjust my track here. So we've equaled the movement allowance of the baggage trains and artillery. So we don't have any more movement points to use for this stack as a total, as a whole. Now we draw another fatigue marker at random. So we drew another 1. So now we have accumulated 4 fatigue, which does exceed the Portuguese infantry. But now I think that we use the baggage trains to put... Oh, I wonder if you have to... Actually, I didn't realize if you have to go in order or not. All right, I'll put the fatigue 1 back that I just drew. But actually, that makes me think, could I go back and now discard the 2 that I drew? Actually, that wouldn't really make sense, would it? I guess you have to put the marker back. You have to make the decision with the commander and make the decision with the baggage trains at the time that you draw the marker. Okay. So, but I use the baggage trains right now to put that fatigue 1 marker back into the pool. The force as a whole has hit its movement allowance, so they are not going to move on. Now, I imagine that the faster units could move on. I wonder how you would separate fatigue at that point from splitting stacks. So you can drop units off, but you cannot pick up units as you move. So I guess that the accumulated fatigue would go with the stack that continues moving. Okay. So Wellesley is done there. So I think that the accumulated fatigue is well, it's not discarded, but it's put back into the fatigue marker pool. Wellesley isn't going to do anything more. I'm going to invert the Wellesley stack there. So the gold A on the top of Wellesley's counter, it's inverted from the Anglo-Ally player's perspective, so that shows that it has activated this turn, whereas the first force that was left behind in Obidos is still available for activation because the A is upright. Now it's the option, or the initiative, I guess, will pass to the French player. We do alternate, basically we're alternating stack activations. I put the movement point marker back on 0 on the track for the French player, and I'm going to invert, hide all of the Anglo-Allied pieces, and we'll pick up, or I will play the French activation the next time I get back to this.